Right.
All this evening of your time as you create time to exist. Allow us to begin this interaction this evening of your time with the entitlement, Karmic Template. Assistant. Now, while the aforementioned visual aid is being prepared, allow us to reiterate some of the ideas we have discussed with you briefly to lay down a foundation for the reason for this graphic. Do not show it to them yet. The idea, first and foremost, is that we have discussed karma, the idea you call karma, and we have discussed the idea that karma is completely self-imposed by you upon yourself. There is no outside exteriorized judgment against you. Karma is simply representative of a momentum, of an idea that you wish to play out in any particular physiological lifetime that may have connections to what you call other physiological lifetimes you have lived or will live. The idea also is that we have discussed that time, even though it is real while you are in it, is nonetheless your projection, your illusion. It is a concept that exists within creation, obviously, since you live within it, but it is your self-created idea, self-created definition, so that you can experience the idea of a physiological reality, because one of the definitions of physiological reality is the concept space-time. Those limitations, those definitions create your ability to exist as a physicalized being. But we have also talked about that because time is an illusion, all the different lives you have ever lived or will ever live in any dimension of experience all exist, in a sense, now, simultaneously. They all have their own reality. They are all a part of the you, the whole you, the total you that you are. But in choosing to experience a fragment of your consciousness in a linear fashion, then you relegate that portion of your consciousness, so to speak, to experience that totality in a step-by-step linear fashion, one after another, rather than all at once, which is the perspective of the non-physical consciousness that you also are, which you colloquially refer to as the oversoul. The oversoul, in that sense, can be viewed, as we have discussed many times, as the projectionist, and the light can be viewed as the film strip, as you call it, each frame on the film representing perhaps a different life or a different moment in one life. Now, to the portion of the film that exists within the film itself from frame to frame, it only knows the frame it is in at any given moment, has what you call a memory of frames that have gone by, and in that sense only a dim understanding of projections or predictions of the frame coming up based on past continuity. But the projectionist sees the whole film all at once and knows that all the frames exist right now, from beginning to end, as you say. And only the characters on the film are isolated to the particular frame in which they exist, until the next frame creates the illusion of movement and change and continuation and momentum. This is a similar analogy to physical reality. Continuity is simply your projection, your illusion in that sense. Your rate of flow, of transformation, of creating a series of different nows in a different format, in a different shape. Even from what you call a movement here to here may actually be the creation of many millions of different realities in between to create the illusion of continuous movement from one point to another. No one really moves anywhere, no one really goes anywhere. Motion in that sense is completely a true illusion. The idea is that you simply recreate the reality over and over and over again, discontinuously, now, to create the idea, the sensation of physical reality that defines its coordinates by space and time. Now, the idea also is that we have discussed that you, since you exist only now, only in the present, experientially, actually create the past as well as the future from the present. because now is the only time in which you actually ever really exist. The idea of memory, whether it be something in your particular present life in the past, or whether it be the idea and notion of a particular past life in the linear, let us say, film of your existence, all of that memory is still created in the present. When you create memory, you are not actually, in a sense, thinking in the past. You are thinking of an idea called the past, but you are creating that memory in the present. All creation takes place in the present. Always. It is always, to put it very simply, now. And it is never any other time, but now. That is the only experiential time that exists. Now, this visual aid can show to some degree, by a mechanical analogy, how the idea of the simultaneousness of all your lives can be interpreted in a linear fashion in the physical reality you are used to experiencing. But remember, this is simply an analogy. For this particular visual aid is, in a sense, simply a two-dimensional presentation of a three-dimensional representation of a fourth-dimensional concept of an infinitely interdimensional structure.
Oh, beautiful.
So, while many different degrees of dimensionality are removed from this particular mechanical visual aid, it will serve to get across the basic idea of the mechanism.
Fantastic.
Are you ready? Yes. Very good. Now, what you will first observe is simply a representation of either, now you can take this either way, many different lives, each one represented by a hexagonal format of 6 arrows pointing in 6 directions, leading to every other hexagonal arrow pattern. So each of those can be a life. Each of those can be a different version of you in a different dimension. Past, present, future, alternate reality, call it what you will, it does not matter. It is a holographic representation of the simultaneous existence of every single probable reality and possible way that you can exist and do exist on every dimension there is to exist upon. It is referred to as a holographic matrix. Holographic in the sense that every point, in that sense, in one sense, is equal to every other point. From any point, you can proceed in any direction, and in a sense, all points connect up to all other points. In other words, each spot contains the information of the whole, and basically is a microcosm of the whole. Now this represents the view that your non-physical oversoul has when it looks at all the different lives that you have simultaneously going on. It simply looks and says, all right, 1934, 1987, 1992, 2500, all these ideas are all simultaneous to the oversoul. They are all extensions of the oversoul, simultaneous extensions in much the same way that your fingers are simultaneous extensions of your hand. Each finger has independence in a sense and represents a different idea, but they all lead back to the hand, are all part of one idea. Now, if you will apply or hold up the karmic overlay template, what you can see is a symbol, a strip, that contains a particular idea. This is the representation of physical reality, linear space-time, with arrows moving only in one direction. The central arrow represents your idea of now. The 2 arrows, in that sense, on what you would call your left represent past, and the 2 on what you would call your right represent the future. In this indication is simply indicated past -1, past -2, future +1, future +2, to indicate different either moments in one life or different lifetimes. You can take it either way. This chart can be used to represent whole lives or moments within one life. You follow along so far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you overlay the idea of the karmic template upon the holographic matrix, you will understand more precisely that karma is simply, literally, pattern recognition. That is all it is. It is a pattern overlay that you decide represents the present life you are living. You thus, by overlaying that particular format or pattern or template upon the present idea you now decide to be, determine with that overlay what connections you have in the past and what connections you have in the future. For it illuminates a particular set of arrows in other simultaneous existence, both now that allows you to call it the past, and simultaneous existence that now allows you to call it the future. Because you are looking through the filter of the overlay, you now only see these simultaneous lifetimes in a linear fashion. Before, now, after. Because that is the definition of physical reality and the definition of the karmic overlay. It is a pattern that you impose upon yourself. Now, this is why, in having chosen that particular pattern, you can see mechanically that you have determined which simultaneous other lives will be represented as past lives and future lives to this life you are creating. Angle the karmic template. Now, you can say that this is perhaps another idea, another lifestyle, another personality that you chose to be. Understand how being that other personality still allows there to be the bleed-through of the holographic matrix to create still the illusion of a temporal momentum. But now you have a different set of past lives, a different set of future lives. And the new person that you are literally determines the fact that you will then relate to a completely different past, a completely different future. So, the idea of having this life now and then assuming that perhaps you die and reincarnate doesn't necessarily mean that the life you're having now will literally be directly connected to the next life you have. You can actually diversify very radically by altering the idea sufficiently so that the next person you are will actually have a different past life than the one you're living now. Understand the mechanics and simply see that the lineage always follows suit. And also, if you take this as an analogy for even the moments in one life, then the change in direction can represent changes in the patterns or ideas that you are being at any given moment. And you can see that by a change in the pattern, you change the feedback all the way back and all the way forward and create literally within one life a different past, a different future for the vibrational frequency you have dialed yourself to at this particular moment. And also it shows you how in the present, what you call the center point, small changes in direction create large changes in the past and large changes in the future, because you can see the sweep of the arc is a mechanical analogy that a small divergence of pattern in the present will compound itself both in the future and in the past to create large variations. You understand the angle of incidence?
Yes.
The idea, therefore, is to recognize that you do not have to create overwhelmingly obvious changes in your present to create overwhelmingly obvious changes in your past and your future. A small divergence in any direction, in any frequency in your present will manifest as a widely different idea or outcome in what you call the future, and a widely different idea and outcome in what you call the past, because as you understand past, you have based your experience on what will happen, on what has happened. This is the illusion you have created. So simply understand that if you change yourself even minutely in the present, and that small change creates a great divergence in the outcome in your future, then it, by definition, there must be a large divergence in your past to have initiated the type of foundation that would create such a large divergence in your future. You understand?
Yeah.
The idea simply is to recognize that you are multidimensional, multidirectional, and any subtle change you make within any one life, or any change you make from life to life will connect you to a whole other series of incidents and events that have to do with the life you are living at the present. So when we talk about the idea of what your past lives were, that does not necessarily mean that in the next life you have, if you have one, that you will have the same lineage. And it does not necessarily mean that the quote-unquote past life you were has the same future life that you consider yourself to be. They branch out multidimensionally, holographically, in all dimensions at once. And you can take any route, any path, and they will all be real, all directly connected to you. Whatever idea you are being at the moment determines utterly any other ideas that are capable of being perceived as being connected to you now, whether they are in what you call the past or the future. You are the dial, and the dial for your reality is always in the present with you. It is never in the past. It is never in the future. It may, in your terms, affect what you call the past and affect what you call the future, but that control and that malleability is with you in the present. You all follow along?
Yes.
Does this mechanical analogy illuminate some of the ideas for you that we have discussed? We can go into this perhaps further at another time, or perhaps according to anything you might specifically wish to apply to this idea. But for now, it will do, and it will sink into your consciousness on whatever level it needs to. Thank you very much, assistant. And at this timing, in exchange for your willingness to allow us to share with you the reflections of the ideas that you all are, we will ask you now, how may I serve you?
Bashar,
Hello.
I'd like some more information on the pink Amazon river dolphins.
All right.
I've been drawn to them. How do they differ from the ocean dolphins, or how are they similar?
They are, in a sense, an aspect, obviously, of the overall dolphin consciousness, a segment of the other alien, if I may, species upon your planet, aside from human, which all cetaceans are in that sense. They, to some degree, have a similar relationship to what you call your typical ocean dolphins as what you call your Native American culture has to the mainstream of your human society. They are, in that sense, the dimensional wanderers. They are more instinctively based. All dolphins are, in a sense, but certain types of oceanic dolphins do have a capacity for what you would call reason that is similar to your way of thinking. Whereas the idea of the Amazon dolphins are far more, let us say, original to your planet in that sense. They are far more naturally attached, far more instinctively attached, and can wander far more readily through different dimensions and gateways. They are not so strongly, completely attached to the present level of what you call your humanity, as are the ocean dolphins. They are connected to many archetypal segments of your overall human consciousness, and therefore can be very conducive in, quote-unquote, reflecting and symbolizing and luring you into associations with your, let us say, old ways, your natural ways, and the ways you are now learning to be, to reconnect with. They are very primal in that sense, very clear in that sense, but almost entirely instinctive. You follow me?
Yes.
So it can form a reconnection for many of you to that pulse of the earth, whereas the oceanic dolphins, although they are connected to that, will appeal more to the idea of your dream realities within reason, within the mentality band, whereas the Amazon dolphins will make connections within the emotional bands and the etheric bands. You follow me?
Yes.
Does that assist you?
Yes, it does. And would the pink ones fall into the same category
Of what?
that you were talking about? The differences?
The pink ones are what we were referring to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
thank you.
if they entice you and they attract you, then that is simply archetypally representative of a certain portion of your consciousness that you are integrating within yourself now. Attract yourself to them in whatever way, shape, or form your imagination so desires. If you wish to go and play with them, by all means do so. But remember, they are in a very way magical. And in that sense, not that anything else is not, but they are more prone to the idea of intuition. And therefore you may find that if you go and attach yourself to that particular symbol, you may find yourself wandering in and out of dimensional gates that you will not necessarily be able to use your reason to understand, but which you can feel with your heart. You follow me?
Yes.
They are very similar to the idea of the vibration of rose quartz, the heart energy, directly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sherry.
Hello, Bashar.
And you.
I was here last week for the first time, and I had a friend with me, and we both put our names in line, and we're leftovers. But he couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to ask his
All
leftover
right.
question also.
Nice.
Just a couple of months ago, he lost his father.
All right.
And I've been doing a lot of reading in the area of Theosophy.
Nice.
And I am interested, we've talked about the ideas I've come across, he and I. And in Theosophy, they say that the soul goes to a kind of blissful rest within a certain period of time, a short period of time after it dies.
In a sense, it will depend upon the belief systems that were most strong at the point of death.
Okay. So I think he's interested to know if his father is really at peace, if there's any illumination we can give in that area. I mean, maybe not specifically his father, not that you're necessarily in touch with that spirit, but generally is that...
The idea, first of all, is to recognize once again that whatever the individual's strongest belief system was at the point of death will usually be what they experience at that moment, because then you become a thought form in a world of thought form, and there is no longer the time lag in the creation of a thought into a thing. So the idea, first of all, is that whatever they most strongly expected to see is usually what they see, and sometimes if they had a strong expectation of something that they may find unpleasant, then seeing it may shock them out of having that particular expectation very quickly. So the idea is to recognize that there will be individuals who will always assist that individual as far as that individual is willing to be assisted, to recognize that the state of bliss that you're referring to is the ability to be willing to recognize that you utterly, on all levels, and particularly very quickly in the quote-unquote non-physical level, utterly create your reality that you experience around you based upon the strongest belief that you have of what that reality will be. So, if an individual is open enough to understand that they did not have to expect one particular experience upon death, then they may be willing to receive the assistance from other individuals to show them that they can really experience anything they want, and in that sense, that is bliss. You follow me?
Yes.
Now, one moment. Once again, repeat time frame of death.
May 5th, 1987. His name is Albert Flank.
Immediate impression is that there are perhaps three, but one very strong individual that they have been associated before in many other lives, what might have been referred to as a very strong feminine energy that preceded them, that is willing to share of her, if I may, experience. I say if I may because a soul is no longer in that sense strictly male or female, but will present herself to him as female because it will be the vibration he will be most familiar with upon arriving in that area, that vibration. And this female will have begun to present different ideas. It is our perception that this individual is, in your terms, catching on rather rapidly.
He was a smart man.
The idea also is that it is completely, utterly up to each and every one of you to decide what you wish to do from that point forward. Whether or not, in your terms, to reincarnate, although, of course, from some of those higher points of view, you understand that it is not reincarnation, but simply a different focus of simultaneous existence. But the decision has not yet been made. One moment. There seems to be some strong consideration of expression of musical aptitudes that may or may not be explored by this individual, either within what you call a reincarnation or in assistance as for a while performing as a spirit guide for those that may in your turn still be physically alive, perhaps most strongly the son. You understand?
Yes.
Our immediate perception, but this can always change because time in that sense is fluid and there is no solid future to predict, is that the individual may choose to explore right now some of these ideas for approximately what you would call the next 2 years before making a strong decision.
The individual being Albert.
Yes. So they may be in contact through dream by functioning as a spirit guide for approximately 2 years while they develop their own understanding of what it is he would like to do. You follow me?
Yes.
In other words, he will serve an apprenticeship of being of service, and in so serving, will give himself more understanding of the desires he has to express himself either within another incarnation or to simply project himself to other dimensions of reality. And your question?
My question. If we take evolution as a fact, at least our present understanding is that evolution is the probability.
Yes. Although your present understanding of what you call evolution is somewhat incomplete.
I'm sure. But if, as much as we know right now,
Yes.
evolution is, and we started as pure physical, amoeba, bacteria, etc., and then grew from there, at what point did the spirit join the physical entity?
Thank you. First of all, recognize that all consciousness, in a sense, is spirit, and all physical reality is consciousness and is spirit. So physical reality is, in a sense, spirit in physical terms, but we understand what you mean. The idea is a blending of the two ideas you are now dealing with in your society that you call evolution and creationism. Because the idea was that there was, in your terms, physiological evolution up to a certain point between what you would call 6 and 3 million of your years ago. And then your overall collective consciousness, combined as one idea, projected itself reincarnationally to the vibration of your Earth at that time, saw in the evolutionary patterns upon your planet a suitable host representation for your consciousness, and then mutations were directed by your consciousness to allow that physiological form to become able to connect to your consciousness, to carry your consciousness into physical reality in this particular vibratory frequency. You follow me?
Yes, I do. So between about 3 and 6 million years ago, this happened.
As you count time generally.
Yeah.
The idea simply is that a suitable vehicle was observed and was mutated to become even more suitable, and then you began to project your consciousness into it, and in a sense, quote unquote, not meaning that you are imprisoned within it, but in a sense locked yourself into association with that physiological form. Now, many changes have taken place since that time as well, and some of these changes are the product of interaction with what you now colloquially call extraterrestrial species as well.
I thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Shirley.
Hi.
Hi.
Recently I had something occur, and I did something not within my integrity, and I felt really terrible.
Oh, all right. So you did two things outside of integrity. The first thing, and then feeling guilty about it.
That's the Catholic way.
All right.
There are two things. One is I said, well, when I did something that, just for lack of saying integrity all over
Yes.
again, when I did something bad, I said, all of a sudden I felt like everything that I'd ever done that was good, and every time I just felt like life was wonderful, I felt like it was a lie.
All right.
And I thought, and I was going, God, where is this coming from?
You.
Couldn't be me.
Yes.
And so then I looked back and I saw that when I first started finding out about the Catholic religion and baby Jesus and all that stuff,
Yes.
well, I wanted to be a saint, but
All
finding
right.
out that I felt a saint had to be pure at heart, which I realized very quickly I wasn't. So, well, I do mean little rotten things, stuff like that.
All right.
And,
You can be a mean little rotten saint. Maybe you Halo in installments.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to talk about. The way to get pure at heart, once you're not pure at heart, the way to get there via Catholicism, which I haven't been for a long time, I didn't even know I had all this stuff still there, was you suffer. You crucify yourself very
Yes.
much like Christ did.
We understand the analogy, but remember that the idea of the Christ consciousness acting out that particular idea of suffering was for the point that neither any of you from that point forward had to do the same idea.
So what do we do now?
Which is up to you. You see, the idea now is that it is completely your option. Because in what you call the enactment of the crucifixion was played out all of the culmination of your need to suffer. And now, if you choose to suffer, it is completely your choice. So do you prefer it?
I just prefer not to do anything outside my integrity.
All right.
It doesn't always happen that way.
You can create it to be that way.
Yeah.
If you wish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on it, but I still tend to go back to if I do something that's
Yes.
not within my integrity, to, do something against myself.
All right, mea culpa. The idea simply is to remember that if you do recognize that you have done something outside of your integrity, and you no longer prefer to do that, well, first of all, in a sense, you do, in fact, only add to the lack of integrity by berating yourself for it rather than simply using it as a positive reflection that now you know something you no longer prefer to do.
Kind of godlike.
Well, you are, you know. The idea simply is to recognize that if you do something outside of integrity and it gives you the opportunity to recognize you no longer wish to do that, then the recognition in and of itself is all the absolving you need. Understand?
I understand.
Therefore, if you simply know, to put it very simply, that you are always doing the best you know how to do at any given moment, and that you are always, to the best of your knowledge, acting within integrity, then should you discover that for some reason you haven't been, then allow yourself to be, in your terms, rejoiceful that the path you took allowed you to see it, so that you could take the opportunity to recognize what you no longer prefer to do, and then you will understand that in having allowed yourself to see what you were doing was an act outside of integrity, that in the overall sense you must have been acting within integrity to have given yourself an opportunity to see that you were acting outside of it.
I got it. Thank you.
It can be that simple.
Yes, I agree. I just got real confused there for a few days. I was like,
All right. Some of you enjoy that. It's fun. But remember that confusion is a limbo state to give you time to assess other probable realities that you may prefer over the one you are living.
Yes, and I couldn't come up with another one, so that's why I was here. The other thing I wanted to share with you,
Yes.
which while I was exploring this same idea, I was looking at the idea of like saints.
Yes.
They're holy.
If you say so.
Well, here's what I realized. I mean, for me anyway, the way that I created at this point is the idea was not to be holy, H-O-L. It was to be W-H-O-L.
Thank you. Very astute.
Well, you're welcome.
And remember in that sense, and in no way, shape, or form is this meant derogatorily to your species, but saints were human too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shoot it! Thank you for applauding yourselves. You deserve it. I.
I would like to share a dream I had.
All right, speak up so all can hear.
And ask a question.
All right.
I don't happen to dream much in my life that I realized.
Okay.
And about a week ago, I had a very vivid dream, like living in it.
Yes.
As I am now.
Yes.
I was on this spaceship that
Nice.
I've been hearing about. I didn't see anything, I just knew I was on a spaceship.
Many of you are in your dream states.
And I didn't see any objects, and I began to wonder who I was going to talk to or how I was going to talk to them.
Yes.
And it came to me in just a knowing way, telepathic.
Yes.
And I just knew I was there, and I all of a sudden had in my hands three objects.
Nice.
A tape which was bigger than our tapes, a disc which is thicker than our discs, and what they told me was a hologram
Yes.
in a case, a glass case, I don't know what was in it, but it...
More of the same as on the tape and on the disc.
Well, it answered questions. I just knew this. It came to me. It created things, and if it got in the wrong hands, it disappeared.
The idea simply is a recognition that anything that is not of the vibration of that information, it is simply unfindable, invisible.
I see.
Yet it is all recorded within you in a very crystalline way. That is what those things represented, is the information and the knowingness that is always recorded in you. Anytime you are of a particular frequency, a particular vibration, you always contain all the information you need to be who you need to be at that moment. Always.
I see. The dream continued, or it was an additional dream.
All right.
Where my wife had a meeting in Long Beach, and I was worried about her driving, and all of a sudden I knew a spaceship was going to take her there, which it did. I didn't see the spaceship at that point. I worried whether they would pick her up, and instantly I was in Long Beach watching her being retrieved.
Yes, as we have said, when you are dreaming, you are in the dream realm, the dream reality. You may call it the astral or etheric realm, and the thought is instantly the thing.
Well, I didn't see much of this except these three objects and the spaceship, but I just had a knowing. I knew this.
Yes.
I just knew.
Yes.
Now, the question that I wanted to ask was, we have a Down syndrome boy in the family that we love very dearly.
All right.
And he's been with us for just short of 20 years, but we wanted to find if you could give us the purpose of our sharing with him and him sharing with us in our family.
This individual is very strongly connected to the extraterrestrial source of your dreams, and is interacting on a level, let us say, above what you are used to interacting upon in your dream reality. Next time you have such a dream, look up, literally, into a higher frequency, and you will recognize him there. For he is projecting into many different dimensions of experience and has created a type of limitation and focus in the physical life to actually push him into those realms much faster, to allow him to maintain his connection to a realm that is more familiar to him than your earth dimension is, and he has attached himself in that way to you to be of representative and reflective significance and assistance to allow you to explore the dimensions and the realms that have to do with who you desire to be in your life. You are a triad, the three of you in that way, and have been many times before. He has been a very strong teacher in the past in many different ways, especially in what you would call Atalantean times. Individuals many times will take upon themselves certain afflictions or restrictions to push themselves in certain dimensional directions that they would otherwise perhaps not move in if they had more freedom in physical reality. His needs and his services are such that he has to project into the dream dimension to be of best assistance, and so he has given himself a symbol to direct him where he needs to be. There can be, as we perceive the energy now, a very strong and profound change that may occur in what you call approximately the 23rd year. For 23 will be one of the symbols representative of the interconnectedness of the holographic matrix, what you call synchronicity in life. And many new ideas may explode upon the scene, and that individual may choose to explode in another direction altogether, interdimensionally. But for now, in what you call the triad of years that remain, allow yourself to realize there will be high degrees of acceleration in your dream reality, if you wish, from this point forward, and that some of them are being directed by that individual very strongly, for they are a very strong spirit and very clear, and very loosely connected to physical reality.
I see.
Next time, think of an equilateral triangle and look up to the apex and see what you see.
I will.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasant dreams.
Thank you.
Shoot it!
Dear Bashar, your introduction fit right into my scenario
Well,
that I was
thank
going to give you today. It's interesting. Well, there was good news and there was bad news.
All right.
The good news was, as a child, I knew I had lived before.
Yes.
The bad news was I had no one to talk to about it.
Now you do.
Yes, things have changed.
Yay.
Okay. Anyway, when I was about 6 years old, I was little kid. I was very able,
Yes.
mentally, physically, emotionally, and I was sent to a camp for the summer, and we were down, there was a river, and we were at the beach, and I don't know if you know what the mill on the floss is or not, but it's a wheel that goes around into the water, and it pulls out one hell of an undertow. And there was a fence quite some distance away from it, which naturally we were told not even to get near to, and further down the beach is where we did our swimming.
All right.
As this, excuse the expression, young boy that I was, I got not only close to that fence,
Nice.
I went under the fence and through it, and the next thing I know, I was caught in this whirlpool, undertow, and I was being drowned and going down, 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 and I says, no way, this is not going to happen to me.
How exciting.
Or some words to that effect. And the next thing I knew, my head was popping out of the water, way on the other side,
Yes.
the safe side, and our counselor, lifeguard, grabs me and starts bawling me out for being so close to the fence.
Yes.
No way could I explain to him, not only was I not close to the fence, I was on the other side being dragged down.
Yes.
And that's when I kind of put this whole experience aside, because I really couldn't communicate about it
Yes.
until many, many, many years later,
Yes.
when I teleported once again.
Yes. It is something becoming far more common in your society now.
But when I teleported that time, it brought the recall of having done this when I was a 6-year-old boy.
Yes.
The only thing I recall, as I said, looking back, prior to me even being 6 years old, it was amazing some of the abilities and the awarenesses that I had.
Not really. It is natural in your children.
Well, it was, except after I did this teleporting and putting on the forgetter,
Yes.
my tone level, emotions, my abilities dropped.
Yes.
My Scientological years, I thought maybe, well, it was just emotion dropping. But listening to you these past year, I came across, and especially what you're discussing today, my particular view is I shifted from one
Reality to another.
to another,
Yes.
a different world,
Yes.
so forth.
You all do that many times a day. Many
Well,
times a day.
I kind of like the old one. This one was a little harder to live with than the old one before.
Not really. It had to be absolutely representative of the vibration that you were. Absolutely. Now you can change that vibration again and pop into whatever world you wish.
I think I'll do it with the younger body. But it was very interesting. This is what I was going to mention today, and you came up with your scenario, and
Yes.
thank you.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to reflect the crystalline, multifaceted consciousness that all of you are discovering yourselves to be. You are all very loosely connected.
Very